Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Tonight we have Director Joe Hassan Bazzi, Chris Klemchuk with the Community Development Department. Go ahead, Director.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
And welcome. This is a public hearing. This is our first public hearing per HUD regulation to discuss our action plan for fiscal year 2018 and into 2019. Our fiscal year ends in June 2018, so the fiscal year will start in 2018 and it'll carry on till June 2019. First of all, I want to introduce myself. My name is Joe Hashem. I'm the director of the department. I'd like to introduce Chris Klemchuk. He is my coordinator. He does a great job. I have Hassan Bazzi, who's our rehab specialist. We have Joe Joseph, who is one of our rehab specialists as well. And we have Jason Smith, who is our planner. He helps us with all these documents. So basically a lot of credit to him. Thank you, Jason, for all your hard work on this one. I respectfully ask that you hold all your questions till the end of the presentation. It is set up in 3 different sections, so we're going to do it 3 parts. I'm going to do the first part, then Jason's going to step in, Chris will finish it up. Any questions that you have, please just wait till the end because we might answer them during the presentation itself. First of all, let me introduce what CDBG is in general. A lot of people hear the name. CDBG stands for Community Development Block Grant. It is a federally grant. It's a federal grant that we receive on a yearly basis from the federal government. We are an entity as a municipality that receives it directly from the federal government, so we're not a sub-recipient. Some other cities or county, or not counties, but townships, they receive it through the county who receives it from the federal government. We receive ours directly from the federal government. And all of the block grant falls under the HUD umbrella, basically. So we have to follow all the HUD rules and what have you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open with an opening statement. This particular public hearing is for the public. Anybody has any questions, please don't be shy to ask any questions, but wait till the end. What we're going to do today is basically we're going to summarize all the proposals that we have received to our department for public funding for fiscal year 2018 and 2019. The draft, basically I'm looking at page 1. The action plan draft, and this is with coordination with the mayor, city council, public review, and comments. So we will take comments and public input. I'm skipping over to page number 3, which says annual action plan. The city annual one-year plan describes specifically how federal funded funds will be spent over the course of the upcoming program year, which is fiscal year 2018-2019. At this point, I'm going to take a break, and I'm going to let Jason take over, who's going to go through the specific line items, and he's going to start with our program income and go forward. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you. Council, thank you for having us today. Members of the public, welcome. I'm going to go over what really are the nuts and bolts of the Community Development Block Grant Program. As Director Hashem mentioned, this was funded through HUD. We do have to follow HUD regulation in awarding projects and implementing projects, and also there's regulation along the way in implementing those projects. Today is our first public hearing to guide us and help us make decisions on how we're going to fund 2018 projects through our annual action plan. The projects that we select that ultimately are adopted by the City Council, usually in late April, early May, are geared to accomplish the goals that we've identified in our 5-year plan. Our 5-year plan covers the 2016-2020 program years. So right now we're in year, I guess it would be year 3 of our current 5-year plan. To give you an idea of the allocation that's received annually by the city, For 2018, it's estimated that the CDB allocation will be somewhere around the $922,000 amount. Now, that's similar to what was received last year. So we go through our planning process here in early 2018. That's the number we usually use as our planning number. When we generally find out our final number closer into the summer, and that's when we can really nail down the exact dollar amounts that each project will receive. But we do have to do our planning with an estimated number. So our number for 2018 is $922,000. Now that's the number that's received directly from HUD. There are other resources that are available throughout the program year, and I'm on page 5 of your presentation here. We call it program income. One of the programs or projects that's implemented on an annual basis through the Community Development Block Grant Program is a housing rehabilitation program. And that's a program that low and moderate income households are eligible for rehabilitation assistance on their homes. Those are deferred loans that are given, 0% deferred loans that are given to those individuals. And those loans do get paid off at the time of sale of the home. The program income currently that we're allocating for this year's budget is $32,110. So you take our $922,000 that's directly received from HUD plus the $32,110 that's been received thus far through program income. You add those together, that gives us a portion of our budget that we're working with. Now, there's a few things to consider when we're making our funding decisions. There are caps that HUD has put on these dollar amounts. There are 2 caps we have to abide by. The first cap is a public service cap. So we're only allowed to use 15% of our allocation for public service activities. And what are public service activities? They are generally social service type programs that assist individuals, counseling for those with substance abuse, programs for seniors, programs for those who have disabilities. Those types of activities are generally considered public service activities. And again, we're only allowed to use 15% of our allocation towards those types of projects. The second cap that I've mentioned is the administrative cap. The city is allowed up to 20% of their allocation for administration. Administration is to pay the salaries of those who administer the program, so staff, for consultants to come and give wonderful presentations in front of City Council and help with the planning process, and a number of other administrative type activities that can be funded. And 20% is the cap for administration. The final component of our total budget for 2018 is our reprogram funds, and those are funds that carry over from previous years. Maybe a project came under budget or a project got canceled in previous years. And that money can carry over into the next year. And we have a $37,000 amount programmed in there as reprogramming funds, giving us a total of $1,091,545 for the fiscal year 2018. Sorry about that. So I'm on page 7 of the presentation now. One important thing related to this community development block grant program is we're making decisions on which projects to fund annually are the HUD national objectives. Each project that we fund is required to meet a HUD national objective. And those are 4 different national objectives. One being a project has to benefit a low and moderate income person based on limited clientele. So an individual or a household that is below the federal threshold to be considered low and moderate income. Second is to benefit a low and moderate income area. So you're going to find with your presentation is a map. We've prepared this map with data that's been provided to us from the census and HUD, and we've identified which areas throughout the city are considered to be low and moderate income areas. So as you look at your map, you'll see the bluish areas throughout the city. Based on census data and HUD data that's been provided, those areas are considered to be low and moderate income. So those are activities that benefit the area. So a sidewalk project, a water main project, those types of activities that benefit a larger area. A park project that would benefit the whole neighborhood. We ensure that those projects are completed within the low and moderate income areas. Thirdly, low and moderate income people based on household income. So this is based on their income threshold. And then finally, to prevent, eliminate slum or blight. So that's when you designate an area of your municipality as a slum blight designation. Maybe there's been some deterioration throughout the years, whether it be a commercial area or residential area. And you can determine if it meets a state definition for slum or blight. That's the national objective you'd be able to utilize to fund an activity. Page 8 of the presentation, I'm going to briefly go over what we mean by low and moderate income. This slide specifically talks about low and moderate income limited clientele populations. So these are the types of eligible individuals and households that would be covered under the CDBG program. That includes low and moderate income persons and households, abused children, elderly persons, battered spouses, homeless persons, adults meeting the Bureau of Census definition of severely disabled persons, illiterate adults, persons living with AIDS, and also migrant farm workers. So those are a listing of types of individuals that would be eligible under this program when we're looking to fund things like public service programs or activities that benefit a specific household. Okay. I'm going to skip over page 9. We talked about the map. So page 10 of the presentation. So I've talked to you about low and moderate income. I've said that many times to you, and your question might be, well, what does that mean? What is low and moderate income? So what we've done here is we've pulled together the HUD household income limits for 2018 to give you an idea of what we mean by low and moderate income based on income for the city of Dearborn Heights. Now, these numbers are updated annually. The last update was done in March of 2017. We would anticipate within the next couple months that new numbers would be available, but they generally fluctuate just by a few $100s from year to year. So this will give you a good idea. So low and moderate income is defined by making 80% or less of the area median income. So you see here we have 8 different household sizes. So depending on your household size, your threshold for being low and moderate income is different. So I'll use a 4-person household as an example. So if you have a 4-person household, you have mom, dad, and 2 children, the low and moderate income threshold is $54,900 a year. So if you make that amount or less, you would be considered low and moderate income household. And it fluctuates depending on your household size, as I mentioned. So when we're making decisions on which activities to fund on an annual basis, these are the types of individuals that these funds are supposed to benefit according to the HUD regulations. And I'm going to turn it over to Chris now to talk about what some of the program proposals that have been received for the 2018 year.
Thank you, Jason. Now we get kind of the core of our public meeting this evening. And that is to present the proposals that we have received during our proposal process, which the deadline ended on January 11th. So we did receive some proposals. We're going to share those with you tonight. And these are not like a written in stone budget. They are merely just the proposals as presented that we got from different city departments, internal proposals, and outside agencies. First, as Jason explained with our cap, our 20% admin, that would be part of our proposed budget, which would be $204,487, and that is the 20% cap that Jason was talking about. So that would be our proposed allowance for our admin number for the upcoming year. We did have some public improvement projects that were proposed. Our normal residential rehabilitation program at $300,000, a water main replacement project in a low mod area at $275,000, code enforcement at $75,000, a proposal from Vista Maria for facility improvements at $46,000, and improvements at the Berwyn Senior Center at $20,000. So our total proposed public improvement projects would be $716,000. And I'm on moving on to page 14 in the presentation, if you're following along. As Jason mentioned, we have public service programs. And the 15% cap, we're looking at an allowance currently based on estimated figures at $143,181. And that would be our allowance. That's the pie, if you will, that we have to share or split up between certain public service projects that we're considering in the budget. And our proposals for public service programs for the upcoming year are on page 15. That would be our senior services, which are Berwyn and Eaton Center, mainly services for seniors, $95,000. Crime prevention, $50,000 through the police department. The Fair Housing Center of Metro Detroit, $6,000. LAHC, which is a nonprofit that submitted a proposal. I believe they help with substance abuse and other social service. It's like an agency. $75,000. The Lennon Center here in Dearborn Heights, $2,850. The Salvation Army, $8,500, and a proposal to supply Knox boxes to eligible individuals here in the city. Those are the boxes that contain keys to your home that are in a locked box, and the fire and police have access to that, so they can enter your home in the case of an emergency and not damage your property and have to do that. So that was a proposal for $8,700. So we have a total proposed of $246,050, and as you can see, our 15% capped amount is $143,181. So you can see our proposals exceed our amount of funding. So that will be our next process of determining how to share that pie and split those up and be within our budget caps. So a summary of our program proposals this evening. We have our planning and admin at $204,000, the public improvement projects at $716,000, the public services programs at $246,000. So total proposed is $1,166,000. And our estimated available funding is $1,091,000. So as you can see, our proposals exceeded our funding, and now our challenge is to create a budget that fits within our caps and our proposals. So that'll be our next process. And thank you for attending this evening. I'll turn it back over to Joe, and he'll finish up with some facts and figures and open it up for public comment.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
And welcome, Mr. Mayor. We started, we waited.
Sorry, little leg problem, so.
Chris and I sat together last week, and basically we decided to put the sheet together. This was never included before in the package that the community development has submitted. Basically, it's an aggregation for the last 5 years of money spent and on what it was spent and how many people benefit from this particular thing. So basically, we took every year and we added them all up to come up to 2017, and we're not over with 2017 yet. So if you look basically at the numbers, we have spent about $1.5 million on residential rehab. That's 55 persons, which kind of equates 55 houses, and obviously there's more, a lot of times more than one person per house. The water main replacement, our community development has spent $1,025,000, and that these particular projects have benefited directly 10,297 people. Code enforcement, we have given them, well, they have received $525,000 over the last 5 years, and that benefit 44,868 persons. Senior services, 491,803, benefit 39,411. And crime prevention, $250,000, and that equated to $69,681. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that the Community and Development Block Grant for the last 5 years has helped with $3,791,000 of federal funded money and have helped approximately 164,000 people in the great city of Dearborn Heights. I think this is the end of our presentation, but before I'm done, I'd like to thank the administration for all their support they have given us throughout the year. I'd like to thank Mr. Bob Ankrat for his communication, and I'd like to also thank the City Council. I'd like to thank the members of the public who have come over and listened to us. This will be broadcasted. We'd like your feedback. Telephone number is 313-791-3500. Please call if you have any questions or any concerns. At this point, I'd like to ask Jason and Chris to join me here. If anybody has any questions, we'll be more than happy to help. Bill?
Mr. Ashman, I have actually 3 questions. The first one is the proposal that you have for 2018.
What page are you on, Councilman?
16, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Okay, so you mentioned that those are estimates. So there's a plan in place right now to see if we can meet the estimated available funding instead of exceeding.
Okay. Yes.
Okay, so for when it's presented at the next meeting for approval, obviously that number should be matched. Okay.
We have to balance that out eventually. What we are going to do starting next week is we start vetting the projects that we have been given to us. We go through the vetting process, and then basically based on a risk assessment scale, we decide who to give the money to. So it is not basically I like this agency or I don't like that agency. There is a scale that we follow, and that's in our in the procedural manual. So it's there. We follow that, and that's how we have to balance our budget.
Okay.
So what we have received is requested amount. It's not the amount that we are going to give out, that because we have to balance the budget. We have more requests than we have money available at this point.
Okay. So for the previous years that you have, 2013 to 2017, the
Yes.
project summary, okay, you have the 3,791,000. Obviously, every year is going to change.
Yes.
With available funding. So have you guys gone back to the previous years to see if have you guys met the budgets or?
Yeah, we always meet our budget.
Okay.
We have to, by law, we have to meet certain criteria for HUD. So we have to spend certain amount of money a year, and if we don't meet that, we get a first year, we get a slap on the hand. The second year, they'll take our money away. Last year was my first year as the director. We did meet our numbers, and thanks to the staff and myself and the administration as well. They all helped us, and all the head of the departments as well. So for those who are here, thank you very much. Did I answer your question?
Yes, I was just kind of curious to see what to expect, when something's presented at the next meeting or,
At the next meeting, you will get heads up on this one. I mean, we will provide these documents for you, I believe, ahead of time.
Yeah.
So you will have a chance to read it because we will eventually need your vote on this. So this one is a public hearing. I believe the next one is also a public hearing, but for the final one, you will be involved in the process.
Okay,
You would have to vote on it, and we can't just have you vote by reading it at the spot. You will get it in your package, and we'll go forward with that.
Thank you.
So you will have a say. Absolutely, it's your decision at the end of the day to approve our budget
Thank you.
or our proposal. Yes.
So I've got 2 questions for you, Director. First question, any of these that are actually loans, the only ones that are loans are the ones that are to residents specifically, correct?
Which ones?
The homes. The only one that's an actual loan is the ones where you give somebody money for rehabbing a home, right?
Yes.
Beyond that, everything else is just a grant, correct?
Yes,
They're
absolutely.
not expected to be paid back. And then the second question, as far as I know, it's a no, but I just want to verify. None of the money comes directly from the city itself, does it?
None of this is all
all
federal.
federal. Okay.
Federal
That's what I
money that
figured.
comes from the federal government.
Okay.
Chris and myself did attend a seminar a couple weeks ago, maybe a little bit more, up in Lansing, and they basically told us that they have approved the next year's budget. which was the 2017, 18.
Be the 18 coming up, but they have a tentative status quo on.
We
They were optimistic we would receive around the same amount that we did get last year, which is that 922,000 figure. So they still have to hash that out at the federal level, though. Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you.
We were given some assurances that the status quo will be going forward. This program was originated back when Gerald Ford was president back in the 70s.
Actually, it was Richard Nixon.
Was it?
And he came up with a block grant program. And that program was established. There used to be a multitude, I'd say 50, 100 different programs, and he combined them all. And this is basically a housing program. The other thing you should be aware of, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I'm correct, that when we provide a loan to someone and they're paying it back, or in many cases, they don't pay it back till after death, and then before the home is sold, we get it back. That stays in this particular program. So it allows us available funds on an ongoing basis, but it can't be used for anything else except for right here, correct?
Absolutely. That's what we call program income. And after the downturn in the economy in 2008, we were not getting any money back. But from talking to Chris and Jason back in 2012, 2011, 2013, we started getting a chunk of this money back. As the house is being sold or anything, if anybody decides to leave that house, we have a lien on that particular house. They have to pay us the money back, and HUD requires us to spend that money first. So it's like a FIFO, first in, first out. And you are very right, Mr. Mayor.
But the loans to individuals, for individual homes, are non-interest bearing.
Non-interest, and there's no scheduled payments. The
Right.
only way you would have to pay us back if you move
Unless
out of
there's
your
transfer
house,
of title.
or if there's a death, or if you decide to rent the house out.
So what about in the event that there's, because when there's a lien on the property, somebody's refinancing, do they have to pay it off also? If I have a loan on this and I'm keeping my home, but I'm just refinancing it for a better interest rate with the mortgage company, in that case, and let's say I want to, max out the loan, what have you, it would have to be paid off, I presume. Is that correct?
Councilman, I think we take these on individual basis. We look at the house and we'll see what they're doing. A lot of times we consult with our attorneys from the Allen Brothers, and a decision that I have to make with consultation
So
with the
case-by-case
attorney.
basis then?
It
Sometimes,
is.
Dave, they subordinate the loan, so they let it sit there and they.
If they're not doing it to basically max out the dollar amount, if they're replacing the exact balance of the mortgage, we don't have a problem subordinating. But if they're doing something to get an
So
extra
you're going to the second tier,
$100,000,
right?
Yeah,
we will subordinate, so we stay second.
Currently, in cases of hardship only, we would subordinate.
Yeah.
But in refinancing, like Joe said, for taking money out, they would have to pay our loan off and roll it in, and then.
Just to give you an idea, Councilman, we are receiving about $100,000, or give or take, a year in program income. We did that last year, I think, and we projected for next year, next fiscal year, that we will get 100,000. In fact, last year we got a little over 100,000.
Thank you.
We're fortunate with Joe's background in lending in financial institutions. I can't think of anybody in this room who has a better grasp and knowledge of financing in finance institutions than yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, I appreciate that. Anybody from the public? I really like to encourage the public to speak up or ask questions. Please. I know you're a sub-recipient and you'd like to say a word. Let me just take more questions and I'll open the floor for the sub-recipients. Councilwoman?
Just because you have more agencies that have applied than your budget can allocate for through the grant, and I know you said you're going to do the vetting process. I would imagine that all of those agencies listed meet the HUD national objectives as well for distribution of the grant.
We have not even opened those packages, to be very honest with you.
Okay.
Our first step is to basically do the public hearing. Our next step is to basically start vetting those programs. And then we open these packages, we look at the financials, we look at the history. I know that I have received a few phone calls from some of the sub-recipients. Sub-recipients, that means not city entities, as city departments. And they wanted to say a couple of words about the history, and I said, by all means. So, yes, sir.
Is there a certain criteria for the public to apply for these programs?
Criteria?
Yeah, requirements. I mean,
Oh, of course. I mean,
requirements for the public.
the first criteria is to meet the income approach that we have, that Jason or Chris talked about. If there's so many people live in the house and you fall within that range of income, you can qualify. You would come to our department and we will give you a package that pretty much spells it out. I'm not going to go through the whole application process, but it's very spelled out on our website. And we have available packages that you can come by to our center, pick it up, fill it out, bring it back.
Can people start from zero? I mean, people start the program. How do they start the program?
You fill out the...
Having people like a low-income family start trying to get to the program.
Sure.
What would the first step?
First step is to either call our office, go to the website, or come to our office, pick up an application. We do advertise for this. I think we have done it in 2 different places. The Dearborn Press and Guide, we have done that, and we did it in the Arab American News because we have an Arabic or Lebanese community here. So, and we sent it at one time in the water bill as well. So we are looking to spend this money. This money we don't want to keep. Our objective is to help the citizens of the great city of Dearborn Heights fix their houses, fix their roofs, get more efficient windows, more efficient heats, air conditions, and what have you. That's what this money is for. It's not for us to put in the bank. We're not allowed to earn interest on it, by the way.
Thank you.
Just to let you know.
I had a question. Were you speaking specifically for the rehab program or in general for people to acquire the money? Because to be a subrecipient, you would have to be like a nonprofit entity. But individual homeowners can apply for the residential rehab program. Was that what you were asking about that program specifically or in general as an applicant?
It's basically in general. As a real estate in the state of Michigan, located in Dearborn Heights. I get a lot of phone calls every day, 5-6 times a day. People trying to get in a home. They're trying to buy a home, but they don't have the fund to buy.
That's something that we don't do.
With the low-income family. I mean, they're families.
This is a rehab program, so you have to own your house, you have to be current on your taxes, and you have to prove that you live in that particular house as a homestead.
So you previously had to have...
So if you want to buy a house, I think we picked up from another seminar some leaflets from Wayne County or the state of Michigan that they might have some funds to help you with your down payment. We will have nothing to do with this, but we will pass on the literature.
Exactly. We don't provide direct assistance programs from our program, but we would refer to, say, MISHDA or another organization that may provide grants for home buyer assistance or that, but we don't provide that direct assistance. So in that sense, yeah, that's how it would work.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking. Any other questions?
Joe?
Yes, sir. Yes.
What criteria does the federal government use to determine how much money they give each city?
Oh my goodness, that's a tough question. I mean, you'd have to ask the Congress. Jason might be able to help. I have no idea. Jason.
I can give you the quick version because there's a pretty detailed formula that they use, and it's based on your population. It's based on your poverty level, the number of households. And actually, I looked this up one time, what the formula looked like, and it looked like this long algebra equation. But the bottom line is it's based on your population and the need in your community. So they take into account the income levels and the poverty rate. So as your population goes down, you may see funding levels decrease. As your population goes up, or if the need for funding goes up, you may see that that number go higher. The goal would be to get to zero. I tell people that because your goal isn't to get more CDBG money. Then your goal is to get to zero, that you don't have any low and moderate income areas or communities. So, so that's in general the criteria, and they use census data from the every 10 years they would calculate that. But now the formula is done annually based on the American Community Survey, because the census data is being constantly collected now, opposed to every 10 years like it used to be done. So, so that's pretty much the basics for how they calculate that.
I can add one thing, because if you talk to neighboring communities, we are large enough population-wise that we're a direct recipient. Sure. there are other communities, like I think Lincoln Park, River Rouge, and some of these, Allen Park, I think, I'm not sure, that has to go through Wayne County in an allocation process. So like where we're sitting here and we make the decision, if we were Lincoln Park, we would not have the ability to determine what is going to be in that grant specifically, because it goes into the bigger grant with Wayne County. And the reason I became aware of this is the last 2 years, a lot of these local communities have been very upset because Wayne County has carved out some of these monies and said, we're going to take 10% for administration, we're going to dictate that you're going to spend 5% on this, and it's been an adjutant with these smaller communities. I mentioned that to you in case you talk to some of the other ones. Westland's a direct recipient, Dearborn is, Livonia is, we're in that same category. But if you go to some of the smaller communities, and they would love to have $1 million, and they'd love to have the right to make their own decision, and they're not able to.
Mayor, at one of our meetings, Oakland County, I think that she sits on one of the committees. Basically, they rely on Oakland County who disperse that money. And some of them get like $2,500 a city. And we're talking about the city. They get $2,500, $5,500 because Oakland County is the decider. So they're not a direct recipient. And I think that's what I started my presentation with. So we are a direct recipient because of our population and because we keep up with all the requirements and all the rules that HUD requires.
Do we submit an application, or
Every
did we
year.
sit back? Do we?
Absolutely. This is part of the application, actually. We start with first public hearing, we do a second public hearing, and then we bring it back to City Council and the administration for approval, and then we submit it to HUD. But throughout the year, we have numbers that we monitor, and we are in direct contact with HUD on basically, I want to say, weekly, or if not, twice or 3 times a week.
I think the other thing in general, because there's a lot of individuals here, you have some really good programs. It becomes very difficult. On that one page, we got to cut like, I think it's $90,000 or $100,000. And it's extremely difficult because when you listen and hear the proposals, it really hurts us as individuals to have to say, gee, we can't fund this particular one. So I want to indicate to all of you that if you don't receive the amount that you'd like, or it's a lesser amount, or you're not a recipient, it doesn't mean that you didn't have a good idea. It's a matter that we have to prioritize. The other thing is it doesn't hurt to make the proposal, because once, like, there's a couple new ones in here, and so we become familiar with you, and maybe next year we can supply funds.
Absolutely.
And there have been some really good programs. There's a food bank out of a church right next to the Wendy's on Van Born. It's on Telegraph near Van Born, and they really do a great job with their food pantry. And while we would like to support them, we've had difficulties, but I've actually witnessed, and the way that they operate and the number of people they help is significant. And I don't know, it didn't look like they put in a request this year, but those are the kind of things, when you see it, when you see them, you really wish we had an extra $1 million to fund all these particular programs.
We will do our best to accommodate anyone based on our formulas, our risk assessment formula, I want to say. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for your input. Appreciate it.
Director Hashem or Jason, maybe you know any recent information on the drastic cuts that they're talking about making to the HUD program? Do those look like it's going to happen or not happen?
That's what I basically,
You wanna go?
Jason will do it. And basically, we went to a seminar where we had a representative from Washington, D.C., and they told us that they're hoping that everything going forward will be the status quo. 2017, the money that we are spending right now was not supposed to be there because the president wanted to eliminate the whole thing. He wanted to zero it out, not reduce it. And eventually they reached an agreement where keep the status quo. And the representative that came from Washington, I forgot her name, I know.
From the National Community Development Association.
That's who, I forgot her name. But she did say that they're hoping that the next fiscal year will be actually the same as this year, status quo basically. It's something between the Democrats and the Republicans, and eventually they just settle in a status quo.
Yeah,
Jason, if you have
that's-
something to add, by all means.
That's more inside info than I have, so that's.
It's good to know. Yeah, our director of HUD's from Detroit.
It didn't help us much, but. Anybody want, I know you wanted to say a couple of words, if you don't mind. Please come on up. I want to thank everybody before I leave the podium. Thank you to the administration, city council, again, Bob, and my staff, Joe, Hassan, Chris, Jason, we appreciate all the work.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.